February marks the start of the highest risk period for any colony. It's also, for many beekeepers, one of the hardest months mentally. So we've done all the hard work in autumn, we've fed the colonies up, we've checked their queen right, and now we've just got to wait and hope. And trust me, I know that is hard. I would like nothing more than to go inside this colony and see their status and check that they're all okay. But we just can't. I cannot risk killing the queen because queens are not available at this time of year. In short, if I were to go in this colony and find a problem, I cannot fix it. So the best thing we can do is just sit and wait. One of the main drivers is day lengths. So in February, from the start of February to the end of February, down here on the south coast, we'll end up with an extra hour and a half of daylight. Now that's a real signal for the bees. These bees are probably laying brood already. In this video, I'm going to walk you through my top 10 tips for beekeeping in February, and I'm going to tell you what we're going to be focusing on in our apiaries this month. Expect brood to be starting now. So many of these queens will have already started laying up brood. And once they commit, then they commit. Now, it takes a lot of food for a colony to start bringing on brood. All of those larvae need feeding, they need a lot of royal jelly, and that takes energy. So this is a high risk period for food. Now, there's very little food around, there's some pollen around, but there's certainly no nectar, so the bees can't go out and forage. So it's really up to us. It's critical between now and April to keep on top of the food levels in these colonies. So every week we're going to be hefting the colonies, we're going to be checking their weight, and if they need it, then we're going to be adding fondant. It's far too early to be feeding syrup, but fondant at this time of year will provide that extra food resource to help a struggling colony make it through to April, when the spring flowers start coming out and the bees can really get out and forage. Now the other trouble is, once these bees start laying brood, then they really are committed. Now they're going to start off with a small tennis ball size, and they might lay up a bit of brood, stop, wait for them to emerge, but that brood requires to be maintained at 35 degrees. Now today, well, for the last 41 days, we've had nothing but rain down here, and today is the first day when it's been dry, but the temperature's dropped right back down to 4 degrees. So the bees inside these colonies, they're going to cluster back up, and that really presents a bit of a problem. If the queen has laid up brood on one side of the colony, the bees won't leave that brood. They won't head over to the left side to get the food that may be on this side. They're going to stay where they are. And this is why it's really critical at the moment to check their food levels. So when we're hefting, not only are we gauging the weight of the hive, we're also trying to gauge, does it feel heavy on one side? Is the food stores perhaps on one side and the bees are on the other? And that's really why when we come to feed fondant, ideally we want to place the fondant right on top of the frames so that the bees, which are underneath them, can come up from their brood, take the food and take it back down. So they really don't have to travel far. Bees will not leave their brood, and if they're starving, if they've run out of food on the frames next to where they've laid that brood up, that's what we call isolation starvation. And between now and April, that's the time when it's going to appear. Tip number 2, learn what you can by looking from outside of the hive. It's absolutely critical that February is not the time to start inspecting colonies. We can look outside and we can see that there's foragers coming in and out. Here's one just coming now. She's got a bit of pollen. So that gives us a good indication that there's enough bees inside the box to send out some foragers. They're out there finding some pollen. Hopefully they're going to be rearing some brood with that nice fresh pollen. That's a really good sign. What I'm not going to do is go inside and start looking around. That is absolutely critical this time of year. And trust me, I know it's hard. There's nothing I would like more to do than go inside here and check to see if we've got a queen and see all those lovely bees. But I can cause so much damage. I can chill the brood, I can roll the queen, and you know what? I cannot recover from any of those situations. And worse still, if I find a problem in there, I can't do anything about it. So I just have to sit on my hands and wait. By the end of March, early April, we've got early season queens available. That's when we're going to start inspecting, and that's when we can really see whether these two colonies and all of the rest of our apiaries have made it through the winter. Prioritise food over stimulation. Certainly in a lot of countries, you'll see people putting on pollen patties. Now, in the UK, I don't think we really need it. We have lots of early season pollen available. We've got crocuses, snowdrops, we've got dandelions, we've got hazels, we got willows. They provide excellent pollen. Now the trouble is, if we start stimulating with pollen, the bees have to fly out and defecate once they consume that pollen sub, and that's a problem. If we get more continued rain, if we get cold days, the bees cannot go out and fly and clean themselves up. But if they can go out and fly, then we've got access to early season pollen anyway. So for us, what I recommend is just about food, just about feeding fondant. We don't feed pollen sub. To be honest with you, I don't think we need to do it. It's just not worth the risk. Tip number 4, don't panic about dead bees at the entrance. Now, I can see there's a few dead bees around the entrance here. I'll give you a close-up. Now, in my eyes, that's actually a good sign. So if you're seeing a few dead bees outside the hive, then to me that signals that the bees inside the brood box are doing what they're doing. They're being hygienic. They're removing the dead bees outside and they're just kicking them out. Now, as you can see, on these colonies, we're on gravel, and that's what I wanted to show you. This time of year, you're quite likely to see bees just dead on the outside of the brood box. In the summer, the bees will take the dead bees, they'll fly away, and you won't see them in the grass. But when it's cold, the bees will literally just kick the dead bees outside, and you'll see them literally in front of the hive. Now, if you're on grass, you quite often don't see them, but here we're on gravel, and you can see the dead bees outside. That's really nothing to worry about. Pretty much all of the bees inside this box are going to die within the next 2 or 3 months anyway. Now, I actually get more worried if I see a colony on hard standing and I don't see dead bees outside the front of the hive. That suggests to me that they're not being hygienic, they're not removing the dead bees, and that sets off more alarm bells in my head than when I see a few dead bees outside the front of the hive or on the landing board. So just remember, all of these bees are going to die. There's probably 10,000 bees in here, and they're all going to die in the next few months. So it's perfectly normal, perfectly acceptable to see dead bees out in front of the hive. Don't worry about it just yet. Tip number 5, help the hive by removing any obstacles in front of them. So these hives aren't too bad. We've got nice clear entrances, and that allows the bees to come and go quite easily without being obstructed. What we have to remember at this time of year, like today, the temperatures drop down to 4 degrees. A few of the bees have been out today, and I can see a couple coming back in. If they're obstructed, if they come across this clump of grass and it's in the way and they hit into that clump of grass and they chill, or they get cold, or they run out of energy, then they can't make it back into the hive. So right now, it's really important that you keep the front of the hive clear and take a look inside and just check there's no obstructions inside the hive. Again, if you see dead bees in front of the hive, just brush them out. If you see brush or grass growing up in front of it, just trim it back. Really important to help the bees this time of year. Energy is scarce, and if they run out of energy when they get to the front door and they crash into an obstacle, that's it. They can't get back inside, and undoubtedly those bees will die, and it's very sad. Tip number 6, treat warm flying days with caution. Now, I've been around 4 or 5 apiaries today, and I've looked at all of the hives and I've seen their flying, but I know perfectly well that all of those colonies will not make it through. I'm seeing activity at the entrance, I'm seeing coming and going, but I'm not counting my chickens yet. I know that we will have a couple of dead outs as we get into spring. We'll probably have some queens which aren't up to par. Maybe they've turned into drone layers. So as much as it's great to sit and watch bees flying at the entrance, that doesn't mean that the colony has made it through. It's really over the next 2 or 3 months it's going to decide whether this colony make it through into the summer. So don't count your chickens until they're hatched. Tip number 6, cleansing flights and spotting on the front of the hive doesn't equal a bad problem. What a cleansing flight is the bees will not defecate inside their hive. So they'll wait for a nice warm day, and they'll all come outside the hive and they'll go and take their poos and defecate somewhere out there. They're very hygienic bees, they're very hygienic creatures, so they don't defecate in the hive unless there's something wrong. Now, quite often you'll see little brown streaks on the front of the hive, and that's the bees' poo. It's really nothing to worry about. What it ultimately means, especially where we've had 41 days of rain, is the bees have been cooped up inside for so long, they get a nice sunny day and they're like, right, let's go, I need to go, let's get outside. And they don't make it far, they might crawl up the box and they might defecate on the side of the box. A little bit of that isn't really anything to worry about. And again, there's nothing we can do if it is anything more serious. The real times that we want to worry is if you see that on top of the frames. Now, we're not going to go inside these colonies. You might, at best, take a little peek inside the top. People worry that dysentery signals nosema. Now, yes, dysentery is a symptom of nosema, but just because there's bee poo on the front of the hive doesn't mean it's nosema. So just don't worry about it. Again, there's very little we can do. Just look on the outside, observe the hive. If you're going to take a little peek under the crown board, just look on top of the frames. A little bit of bee poo on the front of the hive is fine. On the top of the frames, that probably signals a problem. Tip number 8, don't panic. If your colonies look weak, that doesn't mean they're dead yet. Now, we sell a lot of bees and I speak to a lot of people, and I'll get phone calls at this time of year from people saying, do you know what, I've had a look inside the top of the beehive and they're not looking great. And some people want to rush out and buy nukes, and that's fine. But you know what, a lot of the times, actually, those bees will make it through. Now, we've got a very small colony. It was an accident on my behalf. I accidentally knocked the disc on the front of the Payne's polynuke, and a lot of the bees inside panicked and they died. So if you was to look in the top of that box, you would see there's not many bees in there, but they're probably going to make it through. Now, okay, they're not going to be the strongest colony going into the summer, and they're certainly not going to be up to par for customers for us to sell nukes to, but I'm not worried about them. Once we get into April, once they really start expanding, I'm quite sure they'll make it through. I might do some equalising from a different hive to give them a little boost along, but you know what? I'm going to give them a chance. I'm not worried about them. I'm pretty sure they're going to make it, and it always surprises me at how small a colony can get and still expand and still actually, in many instances, go on to make honey in that year. So if you're seeing that your colony might not be looking as strong as you're hoping, don't worry just yet. Tip number 9, use February to plan for the rest of the year. Now, if you're anything like me, we're way behind with building frames, building boxes. The clock's ticking. In about 4 weeks' time, I'm going to be putting extra brood boxes underneath these guys. We're going to start feeding. I've really got to get on and make those frames and get all that kit up together. So now is the time to be doing it. Once that season starts, it's going to start with a bang, and you do not want to be running around trying to get frames made and build your boxes. Now is the time to do it. So get on with it. Note to self, get on and build the frames. Tip number 10, stay aware of emerging risks from the Asian hornet. Now, this is a bit of a new one for us. Now, the Asian hornet, that's been around in England for a couple of years now, and at the end of last season, a village a couple of miles away from my home and where we've got an apiary just up the road from us, they found an Asian hornet nest. So we are on red alert. So around any time from now onwards, really, we're going to be starting putting out some Asian hornet traps and see if we can capture any of the queens that may have overwintered on that colony of Asian hornets that they found just up the road from us. We've got very specific Asian hornet traps. I'll show you the one that we've got. They're very selective, so they only trap for the queen Asian hornets, which is what's going to be out at the early spring. Our wasps and bees, they can come and go from them, so they're not trapped by them. Moths, we do not end up getting trapped in them. What we don't want to be doing is putting out traps and thinking that we're doing the right thing and end up catching a whole load of bycatch. So have a look around, have a look on the market, have a look on the MBU, see what they recommend for Asian hornets, and yeah, keep alert. Remember, if you do see one, if you do trap one, I think it's the MBU. I'll put a link in the description below for how you report an Asian hornet sighting, and fingers crossed we can get on top of it this year. Certainly worrying, they're certainly starting to spread. I see they've spread up into Wales, or a colony has been found up there. Whereas previously they was down in the southeast, now they're certainly becoming a lot more spread and a lot more established. I only hope that this pretty miserable spring has knocked them back, but we're starting to see a few queen wasps out and about now, so it's not going to be long before we get the first sightings of Asian hornets of the year. So one thing to keep on top of, keep monitoring. If you want to put some traps out, it's an emerging risk and one that we've all got to tackle, really. So there we go. February isn't a month to be fixing things. It's a horrible month. It's probably the month I hate worst of the beekeeping season. My anxiety levels are the highest they're going to be throughout the whole year. I'm just hoping that all of these colonies have made it through nice and healthily. I've got my fingers crossed. There's nothing that we can do in February to help these colonies if they do have a problem. It's not the month to be fixing problems. Once we get into March, certainly towards the end of March, that's when we can really start going in, seeing what's made it through, seeing what hasn't, and potentially correcting any problems like early queens if we need to requeen a failing hive. But right now we can do nothing. So we sit, we wait, we prepare for the upcoming mayhem of the spring, we heft, we feed, we observe, and we plan. That's it. So I'm hoping that your bees are doing well. So far from what I'm seeing, our bees are doing okay, fingers crossed. But we'll know in the next 4 to 6 weeks really what the success of the overwintering looks like and really how that sets us up for the next year. So for now, just remember, we just observe and we let the bees do what they're designed to do. They've been doing this for millions of years. We've just got to hope and pray that we've done everything we can do to set them up, and hopefully we get to enjoy them in the spring and going into the summer. Good luck with February, and I hope that your bees are overwintering well. If you find these tips useful, check back next month once we get into March, and I'll give you my top 10 tips for March and every month as we move throughout the season. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you later.